So this is the first time I met Rich, actually. I was reflecting on this. So this picture is very interesting to me. I had no idea how much of the future this picture held for me at the time. So this is from 2009 at the ACAC conference. And this is the first conference that I ever went to. I met Rich at this conference, and Rashri forced Rich to talk to me about some babbling thing about some project I was interested in at the time.
God, how young I look.
I'm just glad there's not a picture of me, that I'm not in this photo. I mean, I was a snot-nosed, I was like 23 probably. So I was, oh man.
You know, I just work here. You know, I don't make.
Yeah, we have like I don't know if we have the like WashU branded face mask.
Yeah,
touching the side of, which I probably shouldn't do. Yeah. You know, and we have a face shield. It says like face shield across the top. It's It's like Orwell or something. It's really.
So it's my pleasure today to introduce our guest, Seth Carnahan. Seth is Associate Professor of Strategy at Washington University in St. Louis. Previously served on the faculty at University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, earned his doctorate from University of Maryland in 2013. He is definitely a rising star in the field of strategy, you know, probably a future superstar. And so we're fortunate to have him on the pro seminar at this point in his upward trajectory. His research focuses on how firms compete with each other in the labor market and why some employees leave their jobs to start new companies. He serves as an associate editor at Management Science, was named to, just like Fabrice, to the top 40 under 40 professor list by Poets and Quants this year. Earned the STR Division's Emerging Scholar Award. Has numerous publications, has been published in Academy Management Journal, Strategic Management Journal, Administrative Science Quarterly, Management Science, and the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Has over 700 Google Scholar citations at this early stage in his career, so definitely on an upward trajectory. So please join me in welcoming Seth Carnahan.
Thank you very much. That's a very nice introduction. That's also an older picture of me. I'm getting this is like the first time, I think this is a good sign I'm getting old. It's the first time I've seen a picture of myself and thought, oh wow, I'm much older than that now. So it's oh gosh, yeah, it's from like 2013, I guess. Now I'm an old man.
Yeah, well, I don't know. you don't have my level of gray yet. So
yeah. It's like those 7 tenure clock years or whatever, I guess.
Old is relative, you know. The saying I like is, you know, inside every old person is a young person wondering what the hell happened.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know if you guys have seen this research. I think it might be, I don't know if it's finance folks or accounting or econ folks. They're doing like photos of CEOs and seeing how they age over the and like correlating that with like firm events or something. And I feel like we could do the same thing for like the years when you're on the tenure clock. Like the years when you're into the tenure clock, you probably have the like biggest marginal impact on your on your faces, you know, wrinkles and bags and whatnot. So
well, it's most visible, with the before and after photos of the U.S. presidents. Right?
Yes.
You see the aging dramatically there. You know, I remember when Obama got elected, there was a joke about that. One of the comedians, put up his picture and said, "This is our forecast of what he's going to look like after his term in office," and he showed a picture of Red Fox.
It would be interesting to go back and look. I mean, because I've seen some pictures of Obama, and he looks very young. And it turns out that was in like 2008. I thought they might have been pictures when he was like a state senator, and it's from when he was like a presidential candidate. And exactly like you said, by the end of his term, he's gray and pretty haggard.
Right. Well, anyway, so I love to start these interviews by asking about how you got to this career. You know, no 10-year-old ever said, "Mommy, I want to be a strategy professor when I grow up." So So I assume that, most people come to this career through some indirect method. And I see that, you started off on a trajectory into accounting. So what's a fine accountant like you doing in a crazy field like this? How did you wind up here?
So for me, the biggest thing for me was I took an undergrad class with Rashri Agarwal,
Mm-hmm.
who wound up being my advisor and who most of you all probably know. So I took this class. I guess it would have been my third year in college. So at Illinois, where I did my undergrad and where Rashri was a professor, there's a required undergrad strategy class. It's like a capstone type class. And I took that class, and Rashri spoke about her research in class and said, I'm always looking for RAs. If anybody wants to, work with me or something, just let me know. And, I think a lot of us say that in class and most people don't really look into it. But I was like, I like this person. I think the stuff she talks about is interesting. She was talking about entrepreneurship in class, which my mom's an entrepreneur, so I found that to be intriguing. And I went and read some of her papers, and I thought, this is pretty cool. I need some extra money. I'd like to learn how to, learn what a professor career is like, because I don't really know much about this. But nobody in my family's an academic, and so I worked with Rashri and collected some data on a paper. This paper just came out, so I collected these data with Rashri in like 2000 and that would have been 2006, and she was working with Sonali, and I think I can't remember who else was on the paper with them, but it's definitely the two of them. Sonali was at Illinois at the time, and I collected some data for them and really enjoyed it. And then I went and worked as a CPA for a while, like you said, I was in accounting, and I did not like it. I only worked for like a year, and I realized pretty quick, like, I want to get out of here. So I applied to some graduate programs, and I decided to go back to Illinois and work with Rashri, and that was kind of it. So it was like one of these the thing she and I joke about is I took her class just totally at random. It wasn't one of these things where like, I'm going to take this class with this, professor that I've sort of like scoped out. It was like her class was on the first floor in Wohlers Hall in Champaign-Urbana. And so I signed up for it, and, it really changed my life. Just kind of crazy.
Wow. That's a cool story. So, so what was it? So, okay. So you got involved in this research project, and I can tell you, I've had, any number of undergraduate research assistants, help me with projects, and or even MBA research assistants help me with projects, and only one has ever gone on to do a PhD. So there must be more to it than that. There must be, there must have been something that motivated you to want to continue beyond just this one, RA project.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been, this is something a lot of us, this probably resonates with a lot of us, but I've always been interested in ideas. And around the same time that I was doing this project with Rashri, I was taking a writing intensive course at University of Illinois for a required course with, it was like 15 students, one professor. And the professor who taught that course was like an urban planning professor. And he told me, it seems like you like ideas, you like to experiment with things. You should think about doing a PhD. Have you thought about doing a PhD? And I thought, I never have. That's kind of interesting. I'm doing this research project with Rashri. I'm enjoying that. And then the following year, I also did some TAing where I was like the discussion leader for 2 sections, and that went really well, and I really enjoyed it. And so I think the combination of thinking, wow, I had finally got a window on what the career was, which I think is something people from the outside don't really get, where you basically get to define the ideas you want to work on. And I thought the ideas and strategy were very exciting. Like the idea of competitive advantage and how firms try to protect their profits from each other, and particularly why some people decide to start new firms, which is something Rashri was really working on at the time, that really got me excited. Those kind of the combination of those things, the questions were exciting. The idea of working on ideas and teaching was exciting. And then I had people telling me, you can do this, which I think is unusual for somebody like, I think people who have parents who are academics kind of understand it as a career. But for me, that was really important because I didn't.
Right. Well, that's good. So that gave you the insight to know what it was all about. That's really nice. So you mentioned your mom was an entrepreneur. What kind of business did she start?
She sold jewelry from wholesale to retail. So she was like a classic broker in, I think, the kind of broker tradition. So what she would do, her competitive advantage was she was very good at identifying trends and jewelry that people would like to buy. And she was able to take it from like cheap sort of wholesale shops and then package it in a way that looks much more appealing for her customers. And so she did that. She started that when I was in probably fourth grade. And that was kind of an all hands on deck, like family business. Like I was loading and unloading the car all the time for the jewelry shows and stuff. My dad did a lot of the bookkeeping. My sister was also involved. So it was the four people in my family, 4 of us working on it. So it wasn't the kind of like high growth, you know, we didn't have employees, she had some help and stuff, but it was definitely a self-employment Schedule C kind of a situation. But it got me interested in these kinds of topics.
Nice. Well, it wasn't a spin out.
That's right. No, it was definitely not a spin out. No, she was more like a high, I don't know if she'd even be a hybrid really. She was an interior designer. That was her college degree. So she was self-employed kind of in like 2 domains.
Okay. So has that experience shown up anywhere in your research or in your teaching at all?
You know, not as much, because most of my research in entrepreneurship is more, you know, for better for worse, like looking at these higher human capital type entrepreneurs, like lawyers and folks like that. But I think it has given me, I think, you know, sometimes this is a constant debate in our literature about, you know, do self-employed folks count as entrepreneurs? And I think having that, I think I was early on like more sensitive to these kinds of things and understanding that like somebody who's filing a Schedule C, like my mom who's self-employed and like doesn't even have an LLC, is much different than somebody who has employees and things like that. So I think it's given me an appreciation for that kind of dichotomy, but I haven't really attacked that or the problems of, you know, Schedule C kind of self-employed folks like her in my research.
Mm-hmm. I would think that self-employment would be a stepping stone towards entrepreneurship. Is that typical? Is that right?
I think so. So like Joe Raffi and Tim Folta, I think, are the folks that have come to my mind. I'm sure there's other people that have worked on this kind of thing where like you have this kind of hybrid path. It's like a real options perspective a little bit, which might probably resonates with you, Rich, where you have, you know, you maybe are self-employed for a little while, you experiment, and then maybe if things go well, you form a company and hire some folks, and kind of that kind of stepping stone approach.
Right. Actually, one of our doctoral students who just graduated did her dissertation using crowdfunding data, looking at how you know, a win on the crowdfunding platform, you know, helps them make the leap from part-time entrepreneur to full-time entrepreneur. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your experience in the doctoral program. Now, actually, you wound up, I guess, moving between doctoral programs when your advisor moved. So tell us a little bit about that experience and about just in general what the experience was like in the doctoral program.
Yeah. So what I started at University of Illinois with Rashri. So I had a 1-year gap where I worked at Deloitte in St. Louis and like lived with my parents. And then I saved up money, and then I moved to Illinois and worked with Rashri for 2 years, and I did my qualifying exams there. And then Rashri moved to Maryland in 2010, and I went there with Rashri and Maka Moeen, who's now a prof at UNC. And shout out to Maka, she just got tenure, and Shweta Gonker, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins. So 3 of us moved with Rashri in 2010. And for me, both places were very, very instrumental for me. So I feel like I got so lucky, because when I was in Illinois, I got exposed to Joe Mahoney in particular. So I had several classes with Joe. Right. And he's amazing at getting your head around all the organizational economics stuff, laying a really strong theory foundation. And then I moved to Maryland, and there it's like an interdisciplinary department where people are more focused on identification and empirical type questions. And so Illinois, I'd say, is more theory focused than Maryland. Maryland is more empirical focused than Illinois. So I kind of got the best of both worlds there, and that really was formative for me. And the other thing is I was able to make friends in both places that I still really rely on today. So like I made co-author relationships with folks at Illinois, like Martin Genko and I guess we're not really co-authors per se, but we've done a lot of census proposals together and share a lot of ideas and give each other feedback on work and stuff. And then at Maryland, I got to get exposed to folks like Hee Jung and Brad Greenwood, who's a longtime co-author of mine. So that really worked out. I also met my wife at Maryland in the doctoral program. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So she's in the accounting department, and she and I met. We were sort of forced together by friends. Like we're all, you know, awkward dorks and stuff. So our friends basically like pushed us together, and we've been married for a couple of years and dating for like 7 years. So I really got, it was a very, very nice. And the biggest thing, I guess, like for doctoral students that may watch this, I mean, the biggest thing for me that I would recommend is making friends with your peers and try to, you never know when those friendships are going to develop into really valuable co-author relationships as well. I think that's a really important perspective to have in mind when you're navigating your doctoral program.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. It's always good to have people, to even just to bounce ideas off of,
Yeah.
if it doesn't turn into a collaboration. But yeah, good. So remind us what your dissertation project was all about, and maybe tell us a little bit about or the process of finding that dissertation topic.
Yeah.
How did you get into that?
Yeah, so my dissertation, the dissertation's about when a firm fails, how does this affect entrepreneurial opportunities for employees working at other firms in the industry? So the basic idea is that one firm fails, competition declines, the employees and customers and things like that were tied to that firm are now sort of loose, if you want to be just sort of
Sure.
simple about it. And this creates opportunities for other folks to found firms. And so the idea, this is sort of an old idea in the literature. And for me, I kind of came at this very phenomenologically through my own experience as a graduate student. So when I was at Deloitte as an auditor, a lot of my colleagues had worked for Arthur Andersen prior to Andersen's.
Right. Yes.
And so this is a hugely salient failure in the accounting world. And so I was there in like 2007, Andersen failed in like 2002. So this was still very fresh on people's minds. And I remember people talking about how they had colleagues who were able to start their own smaller accounting shops by grabbing clients that were dissatisfied with Arthur Andersen and maybe partnering with some former Andersen employees that had access to those clients and things like that. And I thought to myself, this is a really interesting phenomenon. I'd love to study this for my dissertation. And I tried to collect data directly on Andersen's failure and the movement of accountants through the accounting industry, but it's a difficult setting to get that kind of data. So I in hindsight, like maybe I could have been more clever with like getting state license data from CPAs or something like that, but I never quite figured it out. But then I had this on my mind, and then I was using census data, and I realized that I could study the same question but with law firms, and so then it really came together when I realized that in the data I was using, the census data, there were deaths of employees. So you could see deaths of lawyers, and that gave me some empirical leverage to get these kind of quasi-exogenous, failures of firms.
I see.
And so this kind of like, so I had kind of all three, I had several things come together at the same time. It was like I had the idea sitting there for years, and then I had data where I thought, okay, maybe I can use this, and then I was able to find a research design that really allowed me to say something about the question. So that was what brought it all together.
So these law firms, they just basically, I guess the managing partner dies and the firm dissolves or something like that?
Yeah, I ultimately wound up looking at solo practitioners who die. So I had, because this is like, like identification, like crazy stuff where it's like, okay, if somebody dies, the firm is probably already weak if the firm shuts down when someone dies. And so I wound up just like really narrowing the scope of the failures to these, singleton firms that evaporate when someone dies.
Okay. So they didn't hire any other lawyers or what? They were.
Yeah, a lot of, so it's the legal industry is kind of interesting where it's like, it's one of these very, I don't know what the right word is, like bimodal, I guess. Like you have a ton of the establishments are like single person establishments. Right. A lot of the employment is in multi-person establishments. So you have these like huge firms and a bunch of these little solos. Right. So they may have like a paralegal or an executive assistant or something like that.
Oh, I see. Those are the resources that get freed up.
Exactly. That's right. And the clients and things like that.
I was just going to ask what were the resources. Okay, so the clients and the assistants and paralegals. Got it. Okay, now I understand. Okay, so that's how you got that into that project. So tell us a little bit, what were the challenges? I mean, I guess you mentioned one in terms of you got sidetracked trying to do this with accounting firms and got stymied with that. But were there any other challenges that you faced along the way in doing this dissertation?
Yeah, for me, so this one, there's kind of two phases here. I think like in the doctoral program, it was challenging for me to figure out exactly how to to understand the census data. So like trying to get my head around the census data and how law firms are represented in those data and how deaths of employees are represented in those data. So to make sure I understood the data generating process was challenging. And then once I graduated, Heejung knows this kind of thing well. The census data, our access to the census data expired, so I could no longer use that data to push forward my research. So I actually had to replicate. I wound up replicating the results in a different data set on lawyers, which is the Martindale-Hubbell data.
Okay.
Which is like a lawyer white pages kind of a thing. So like Heejung has used the like lobbyist data using government records on lobbyists. And this isn't government records, but it's a similar kind of data set where you can observe lawyers over time across firms and things like that. And so I had to basically start from scratch, and I went out and collected obituaries about lawyers and all kinds of things. So it was, and it wound up, I don't even know if I have it in my published paper. I don't even know if I mentioned that I did all this same stuff in the census data. But I have my published papers, Martindale-Hubbell data, my dissertation is census data. So it's just, that was a huge headache. That was a huge headache.
So that explains why it took so long for that to get published, right? That was the paper in SMJ in 2017, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
that would have been and you finished your PhD in 2013. So it's so I can see how that would slow things down.
Yeah. It was demoralizing. I almost dropped the paper a couple of times.
Oh.
Yeah, this is a place where like having support was really helpful. Like Rashford really encouraged me to keep going. And that paper doesn't have a ton of citations either. Like it really was like a labor of love in some ways. It was something where I wanted to. I really feel I'm passionate about the idea, and I wanted to push it across the finish line. But I don't know that it really has a lot of impact necessarily. But it was a long journey.
Well, it's obviously, that many of your papers have won awards, but that one won 2 awards. So, definitely high quality. So let's see. So those were the challenges. So tell us a little bit about, how you moved from that dissertation project to the work that you're doing now. Because I see that, you've got a bunch of different obviously everything's still related to kind of strategic human capital issues, but a lot of different topics that you're attacking here: gig economy, political ideology, CSR, outsourcing, even medical outcomes, health outcomes. So tell us a little bit about what guides your decisions about what projects to take on and why this set of projects, and how you got from what you were doing in your dissertation to this set of projects.
So I think and it's one of these things where I'm working on my tenure statement now. So I'm trying to really think through, like, to have a clean sort of a clean story about what it is that I like to work on. And I think the biggest thing.
This is a dangerous time to be doing this interview, because your tenure committee could be viewing this.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You got to be careful what you say.
I know. So for me, the thing that's always in the back of my mind, and it's like, this is weird because I don't know if this actually comes out in my research or not, but the thing that I'm really interested in studying is the division of value between firms and employees. So that's what I'm like at the bottom, at the fundamental root. That's what I'm really interested in. And so then I try to find that's the kind of thing that will capture my attention and my passion. And then so then each of these projects, I see them sort of linked that way. I don't want to go through all that. I could go project by project, but I have this stream of work on gender inequality, and that I see as sort of this. I see that fundamentally about value division between firms and employees as well. And that, to me, I got interested in that from, again, this is like based on my own experience. My sister working in an architecture firm that's a heavily male environment in Memphis, Tennessee, which is sort of a southern state, and seeing the kind of issues that she has there, trying to navigate the workplace, and that got me interested in gender related issues at work. And I have a chapter in my dissertation about that as well. And then so I had that on my mind, and then I have my co-author relationships have really helped me understand the different things that I want to work on. So for example, Brad Greenwood and I, we were just talking about the gig economy. One day we were chatting about the gig economy and entrepreneurship. And I said, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal about how Uber and these different gig economy platforms are going to start increasing entrepreneurship because people can work on Uber and sort of develop their ideas and then, spin out and start their own firms after they get an opportunity to sort of think about what they're doing and have time to kind of put things together. And Brad said, no, that's nonsense. There's no way this is going to actually increase entrepreneurship. What it's going to do is have people who are thinking about being entrepreneurs are just going to work for Uber. It's actually going to have a decline in entrepreneurship. And this is, not necessarily a good thing and this sort of thing. And so we had this argument, and then we took it to the data and we found actually Brad was right and I was wrong. So that's and that's a paper where we weren't sure if people were going to be that interested in it, but it was very interesting to us. Because it's sort of like at the times like 2013, like gig economy. Okay, it's like a paper about Uber. Do people care? But the gig economy has since become a very big topic. And for me, like I find that setting very, very interesting because again, it's about the division of value between these contractors who now are arguing that they want to be employees in these large platforms. So that's what really gets me. That's what gets me excited is this division of value idea. And then I sort of try to pursue that in different settings. And then that's why spinouts are interesting to me because I think a lot of entrepreneurs are motivated to leave because they feel like they're not capturing value. So that's sort of the thing that connects all my projects together.
That's cool. So I guess the lesson from that project is it's kind of difficult to work on your business plan while you're driving. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And I think a lot of it too is it's sort of people are the Uber. I think it's a big sorting mechanism too, where people who are interested in maybe being an entrepreneur, they maybe just want the flexible schedule more than anything else, especially folks that want this kind of Schedule C employment, kind of like my mom. So instead of doing flexible Schedule C employment in, say, landscaping or wedding planning or something that's a bit more uncertain, they can do that with Uber. So I think that's a big part of what drives a negative relationship between these platforms and like Schedule C type self-employment.
Right. So you say that you define your overall, and I think that is a good way to frame it for a tenure review statement, that you define your overall kind of mission statement in terms of the division of value between firms and their employees. So given that that's your focus, the division of value between firms and employees, what are the biggest unanswered questions in that area, in that in that topic at this point? What do we not know about the division of value between firms and their employees that we really ought to know by now?
Oh man, I love that question. I think I have the sense that we know very little. I think we tend to think of these things in relatively simplistic, compensating differential kinds of logic, where we think, okay, employees have a certain amount of utility. Firms are happy to give employees some perks that perhaps provide them with utility, but are not as costly for the firm to provide. I think we have some intuition around that. I think we don't necessarily have great empirical evidence about the kinds of perks that employees value, the different strategies that firms can use to provide perks and different things that employees want at a cost that is low for the firm to provide them. So I think we have sort of this intuition that is present, but I don't think we have great examples for managers. I could probably do a 2-hour class about this, but I wouldn't have as many practical theory. Like I wouldn't have bits of theory that I would feel comfortable giving to managers and students that I think would be very reproducible. So I think trying to build stronger frameworks around the way that managers can match ideas about what kinds of employees they want to attract, what strategy the firm is pursuing, and how they can potentially link those two things together to, at some level, this sounds, I don't know what the right word is, maybe too instrumental on the part of firms, but to avoid paying employees their full, marginal product. So the employee still enjoys the job, but if they're getting more, they're getting utility instead of money wages. And I don't think we have great frameworks there. So I think Russ Koff and Dave Krasinski and Ben Campbell are doing a lot of good stuff to push that forward, and Clint Chadwick as well. But I think we need more work there.
Okay, good. Yeah, so more work on this issue of firm-specific incentives and how firm-specific incentives tie into the firm's strategy. Basically, what is it about the firm's unique strategy that better enables them to provide firm-specific incentives? Something like that, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Any other unanswered questions you can think of that would be good to understand at this point? It's okay if the answer is no, but
no, of course. It's just hard. I want to be able to. I could just start spouting, but then I'll just ramble even more than I have been. So that's not good for anybody.
Well, that's the whole purpose of this.
I know. So I think the biggest thing to me, the place where we can have the most impact is trying to understand the rise of superstar firms and monopsony. So this is a place where I think labor econ and industrial organization is really interested in this topic. A lot of policymakers are interested in this topic. And I think we as strategy scholars have a lot to say about this because of our focus on firm heterogeneity and things like that. And I have some projects that are moving in this direction. So I have one project that looks at how managers' social relationships may impede the movement of employees between their firms. And I want to try to push that forward as well. But it's hard. It's so hard to find good data that allow you to get at this, to understand, to get it like interesting aspects of firm heterogeneity, and then link that to employees' outcomes, and with a focus on labor market competition or a lack of labor market competition, because it's so hard to define a labor market, in many ways. How do we know? We have such poor data on the types of job offers that employees get, and who's making them offers, and things like that. So I think that, really, if I want to back my way into a question, if I could wave a magic wand and have something to make progress in this literature, it would be data on employees' job offers, who they get offers from, which offers they choose to take. I think that would be the piece that would really, really allow us to make some progress on these questions around division of value between firms and employees, and then also related to this rise in labor market power among firms, which I think would give us some policy relevance that I think we'd like to have but don't necessarily have right now. Yeah.
I like that, how you put it, the kind of the monopsony power of superstar firms. That's interesting, because there clearly are, certain firms that, everybody wants to work for.
Yeah.
And are willing to, make sacrifices in order to work for them, right? I guess back in the day, it would have been companies like IBM or GE. Yeah. Nowadays it probably would be companies like Google or Facebook or Apple, right? So that is an interesting topic.
I think, and also locally, I see this here in St. Louis. There's just a handful of, so if you're a professional employee here in St. Louis and you want to try to get some, executive manager type position there, it's a relatively thin market here in terms of the demand. So I don't know, I don't have a great sense of other places around the country, but there's a lot of data that suggests that a lot of labor markets, at least local labor markets, are pretty concentrated. So if you're somebody who's rooted in a place, it can be pretty hard to find multiple offers for your services. And that's even folks that aren't necessarily trying to get into these super duper star places like Google and Apple and what.
Right, and I would think it would be not too. I don't know. I guess there are certain, I don't know how easy it would be to get data on this, but there's obviously certain markers of mobility. Does the person have kids, for example, right? If they have kids, then they just become dramatically less mobile most of the time.
Yeah.
So if you had data about that, then that might help in terms of measuring mobility. I'm just trying to think of, what would be a kind of a natural experiment on that.
Yeah. So there's some, so I know that I think Pierre Assoulay and some co-authors have a paper where they document how there's these discontinuities in mobility based on the age of your children. I don't remember the exact details, but it's basically when your kids are moving between elementary school and junior high, and between junior high and high school, you're more mobile.
Right.
Your kids are going to have to change schools anyway, so it's a little bit easier to dislodge the family at that point. And I know some folks have tried to push on that using census data. I think Martin Ganko and Florence Honore had a project they were working on, but I think they may have run out of the clock on with the census data trying to make that happen. So I think people have kind of thought about these things, but it's so hard to get data on someone's labor market outcomes and their family that it's, I think, like, unless you're the Danish sorts of data sets and Scandinavian data probably are the best hope for this, but I'm not even sure if they have that there. They probably do. They have they have everything, but.
Right. Now, and then there are so obviously, why do people want so badly to work for Google or Facebook or Apple or whatever? I think a piece of it is because that helps them get their next job.
Yeah.
Because they have that brand name on their resume. I'm not quite sure where I was going with this. I did have a thought. I'm reminded of, I assume you've seen the culture document from Netflix, their recruiting deck. Oh,
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
No, it's something that Reed Hastings put out, maybe a decade ago or something like that. And Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook called it the most important document ever to come out of Silicon Valley, right?
Wow.
And basically one of the tenets in it is Netflix distinguishes itself from these other tech companies by they say we hire adults. So they say go do your 5 years at Google somewhere else or at Apple or whatever, then we'll hire you when you're matured. And that, so maybe people getting a job at Netflix is the way to get at that monopsony power of these other firms in the entry level labor market or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Just thought, I'll remind me and I'll send that document.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah. So let me see how I'm doing on time. Not too bad. So you spent most of your career so far at Michigan, and did you have much of a chance to? Now I know WashU doesn't have many doctoral students, did you get much of a chance to work with doctoral students at University of Michigan?
Yes, yeah. So that was one of the things I really liked about Ross. There's a very vibrant doctoral program. So I've chaired one dissertation, and I've been on, I think, like maybe 5 or 6 dissertations as committee members. So I was an outside member on several dissertations. So in Michigan, you have to have somebody from within the business school, but in a different department. And since my work was sort of like cross-disciplinary.
Oh, so you got to be like on an accounting committee or finance?
Yeah, I was business economics and OB were the two departments that I did that with, and that was very interesting. So like I was on a qualitative dissertation from Lindsay Cameron, who's now at Wharton, and she was doing work on the gig economy. And I never, I've reviewed some qualitative papers. I've never done a qualitative paper myself. And that was extremely interesting. I learned a lot from that. And the student that I've worked with the most is Harsh Ketker. So Harsh.
Oh, yeah, I know Harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, he's starting at Bocconi now.
Oh, wonderful! I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah, I met Harsh when I gave a talk at Ross a couple of years ago.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So Harsh and I, we clicked pretty much immediately. Like we're more or less the same age, so we have a very like flat relationship where I just sort of try to help him do what he's doing. I certainly don't like dictate his projects, and he's doing really interesting stuff on automation and human capital. And he and I went back and forth and tried to find some things to work on. And then I moved to WashU like right around the time that we agreed that I would be his chair. And that was. I mean, he really was very resilient. He dealt with it really well, and had a great dissertation. Has a great job. And he and his wife, like I said, just moved there recently. So it's, but that was, I mean, that was a lot of fun. He and I are still working on current projects now. And Michigan is a very bottom up kind of matching process between faculty and doctoral students. So Maryland, that we were assigned, and Illinois, we were assigned to faculty. And after a while, you kind of, so like after a while, I just was assigned to Rochery most of the time. But at the beginning, you get assigned to a lot of different folks so people can get to know each other, which has benefits. But then you also have this kind of benefit from the bottom up style where faculty and students just kind of find each other without structure. And Michigan was that way. So I don't have any co-authored papers that are published with doctoral students, but Harsh and I have several things that are moving along.
So you've enjoyed that experience of working with doctoral students?
Yeah. I enjoy that a lot. I'm starting to work with a student here at WashU as well. We have a smaller program here, so I think we have 4 or 5 active students. So that's something I really, it keeps, I don't know, it keeps me energized, keeps me fresh. And also I learned a ton from Harsh too. So hopefully I think it's good for everybody. I certainly get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I learn a lot from my doctoral students too. So when you're working with these doctoral students, what's the most important piece of advice that you give to your doctoral students?
I think you have to love what you're working on. I think that's the biggest thing. Because when I look at people that have succeeded versus failed in our profession, I mean, this is very hard to get good data on, but just from my own anecdata, I feel like people that don't necessarily make it through, they don't necessarily have a topic that they're passionate about. But you have to have something you really care about to push through the days where, you have a lot of flexibility. You could go, watch a movie or play, Nintendo or something, and to have the stick-to-itiveness to wake up every day, do the work, keep pushing through negative comments, especially, negative reviewer comments. You have a horrible R&R. You really have to like what you're doing. So you should not pick projects that are just sort of like, I want to try to do a quick paper on XYZ. Papers are almost never quick. You have to be passionate.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten involved in a few projects that I really shouldn't have gotten involved in, and I regret it because it was just tedious and, well, I don't know, it just was a drag. Let's put it that way. So
yeah, totally.
So I agree. That's very good advice. Thank you. And let's thank Seth for being a good sport about putting up with the interview, and really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate it.